I think that President Macron is going to have a very difficult time with this libel suit. And the reason for that is really simple. Under US law, public officials are required to prove actual malice, knowledge of falsity, reckless disregard for the truth. In his lengthy complaint, he has certainly alleged that on the part of this podcaster, but I think he's also probably not giving enough deference to the fact that courts in the United States grant broad discretion to individuals to comment on public officials. I think that Mr. Clair's complaint that he's prepared on behalf of Macron spends a lot of time talking about the motivation of this podcaster, talks about monetizing this narrative, making a profit off of it, and trying to suggest that that was a huge inducement to continue to pursue a story even after she had been told that it wasn't true. This is a tricky claim to make because there are many court rulings that have said that just because a publisher is in a commercial business, a for-profit business, doesn't mean that what they're doing is suspect simply because of that. In a capitalist society, we're in the media business to make money for the most part. And if that were the basis for claiming actual malice, then everybody would be out of business. And they've made a lot of claims about damages in terms of the ability to engage in future business dealings and so forth. But I would say that that is probably somewhat speculative. So in the absence of a clear showing of damages, I think a court would be very skeptical about the actual malice claim. What the complaint is trying to do is build the case that this is not an instance of somebody who accidentally overlooked a piece of information that would contradict what they were going to say, that in other words, that they acted negligently, but that it was done quite deliberately with knowledge that it was not true and having repeatedly denied any kind of response when the Macrons challenged the story that she was telling. At least that's what the complaint says. The courts have tried to make clear that just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean you're going to be telling a lie about them. So in and of itself, it would never be sufficient to say, you know, you've been my political enemy forever, and so of course you're going to lie about me. That's simply not true, and therefore would not be sufficient in and of itself. It would be part of the body of evidence, but it would have to be bolstered by being able to demonstrate that, again, the podcaster knew that things that she was publishing were not true or acted so recklessly in pursuit of this vendetta that she went beyond not just a negligence standard, but a deliberate attempt to spread falsity that she knew. So I would say that one of the key points of the Trump presidency has been to what he calls open up the libel laws. He has suggested that the New York Times versus Sullivan actual malice standard is unfair to plaintiffs and should be re-examined and perhaps overruled by the current Supreme Court. And there are at least 2 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court who have made clear that they are very open to that, especially Justice Thomas. Most countries don't have the New York Times versus Sullivan actual malice standard. And so that means it's very difficult for somebody suing in a foreign country who gets a judgment under that law to then enforce that law in the United States. That, I'm sure, is why Macron has brought this suit here in the United States, because he knows. The fact is that he will have to submit to pretrial discovery when it will be very possible for many, many questions to be asked, which he might prefer not to answer. As you know, I'm sure France has very robust privacy law. Our law is much less protective, especially if it's a matter of public interest and concern. And when you're talking about a public figure like Macron, that's going to be a very broad umbrella. So I think he may be unhappy with what will follow during the course of the pretrial discovery in this case.